All right. Well, welcome back, episode 16 of Harrison Talks Pod. We are recording this on a Monday morning in Thailand and a very late Sunday evening back in America. We are almost exactly 24 hours since one of the biggest, maybe the biggest trade in NBA history, and just a couple of hours off of a another big trade, but not as historic. We'll talk about that as well. But without further ado, I am joined today by my friend Nick, talking basketball. Nick, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. Appreciate you for having me on, man. It's been a crazy weekend to say the least. Like it's been a bizarre 24 hours, and we're gonna discuss all of it honestly. Because a lot of it I'm still in shock, and honestly, especially with the trade deadline coming around, like right around the corner, I wouldn't be surprised if there's more bombs that's gonna happen in the NBA. I think we just got to prepare ourselves for what's ahead.
You have my full attention, but I got the Bleacher Report noties up just in case we get some breaking news. Because who knows?
Yeah,
Who
anything
knows?
could happen at this point.
Who knows? It's a very it's like being a podcaster is like being a first responder during the trade deadline season. That's a joke. Shout out to first responders. Um, but first thing, Nick, so me and Nick have corresponded, but we've never collabed before, and I won't bury the lead too much, but I gotta talk to you about a couple things before we do the NBA basketball. And
Okay.
the first one's a surprise to you. The Grammys are going on right now. I just saw that Kendrick Lamar is now a 21-time Grammy winner. Won Best Video, Best Song, had everyone singing, not like us in the audience, which is pretty crazy. Another thing I wanted to talk to you about, because I've seen your Twitter posts before. You're a D'Angelo fan, aren't you?
I am. Yeah, I actually am.
Yeah. Uh, One of my favorite albums turned 25 last week, which is Voodoo. And I was wondering, Nick, this is not gonna take too long. Can you power
Okay.
rank your D'Angelo albums? Brown Sugar, 95, Voodoo, 2000, Black Messiah, 2014. How would you rank those albums?
So I'll go from three to one. So I'll start with Black Messiah. Honestly, I only heard Black Messiah probably twice, so I can't remember vividly like the songs like that. But I did. I still enjoyed it though. Honestly, I think it's a really good album. Two, and this is controversial because I've also had back and forth with people that I know that are big D'Angelo fans. I go Voodoo second, and I know a lot of people have Voodoo as number one on their list. But and Voodoo's a phenomenal album. I'm not gonna take anything away, but I guess maybe the reason why I go Voodoo two and Brown Sugar one, probably because I guess I could just remember the first time I ever heard D'Angelo. Like the first song I ever heard was Lady. And then once I heard Lady, I went back, listened to the album. It was a phenomenal album. We talk about Brown Sugar, the song, Cruising, Lady itself. Like I just always thoroughly enjoyed that album, just as my personal favorite. Honestly, D'Angelo doesn't have a bad project, so it is hard to necessarily rank the albums from which one is the best and which one's second or third best. But me personally, I always had Brown Sugar first and then Voodoo second, even though Voodoo is, in many people's eyes, his best album. And it's a phenomenal body of work, honestly.
And you got mine. Uh, I've listened to all the albums so many times. I listen to D'Angelo at least once a week if I'm cleaning or driving. I mean, if you're listening to cruising, you should be cruising. You should be in
Yeah,
your car. With your
nice.
girl. Something like that. But yeah, you said mine. Black Messiah 3, which is a phenomenal album. Brown Sugar 2, Voodoo 1. The production value of Voodoo I'd put up against, Thriller, Songs of the Key of Life. I'd put up with the best produced albums. And a lot of it just comes down to the musicians and people that D'Angelo chose to work with. Questlove producing Voodoo. Uh, Funny quick story, and then we move on. The guitar player for Voodoo is a man named Charlie Hunter, and I never knew that before. Uh, I claim to be a big D'Angelo fan. I never knew that. And that's funny because I've met Charlie Hunter a couple of times. I've gone and
Really?
I've seen him play in St. Louis a couple of times, and I've always gotten a chance to talk to him and say what's up. But I've never been like, "Hey, man, you played on like my favorite album." So well, there's that.
Hey, man, that happens, man. But I will say D'Angelo does have a great ear for production. I will say that. I mean, all of his albums are greatly produced, honestly, man. Like, you can tell, like, he really has a great ear for beats. And you can tell he's more than just an R&B artist. He's like a real musician all around, honestly. I think he plays like multiple instruments as well. So he's always been such a great all-around artist, not just an R&B singer, but just a great all-around artist, honestly. So I don't think people necessarily look at it from that perspective either.
When I saw him in 2015, so it was a year after Black Messiah. Yeah, he played a little guitar. He's a
Hmm.
phenomenal piano player. His live piano playing is as good as his albums. You know, it's the same or better. All right. All right. That was 5 minutes. We got to move on. And Nick, the other part, and I was not gonna not have you on here and not talk. That was a triple negative about women's basketball. And of course, I told you I haven't been following Unrivaled too closely, but I'm enthralled by it and just the overall status of women's basketball overall. So I wanted your takes on it. Um, Basically, you've been watching it more than me. First question would be like, what has surprised you about Unrivaled League the most so far? And do you see anything so far that you wish was different?
Um, well, first I'll just say this, man. Unrivaled through 3 weeks has been a success, honestly. Even leading up into this season, I was questioning how things would be, honestly, because this is a new setting for women's basketball. It's a 3-on-3 league, but not only is it 3-on-3, but it's full court as well. And even though the court is condensed, I think it's like 70 by 50. The court is like the measurements, but it's still different, honestly. But honestly, just leading up into the season, like probably like 3 weeks before opening night, I started to see a lot of the content, they post on Instagram, Twitter, and even just the practices. And I'm thinking, like, man, like these players are really getting up for this league and they're going to make it exciting. So from week one, it's just been spectacular, honestly. I think the biggest surprise of the season has been, I think it's honestly just been the production of like the young players, honestly. Like you see, a player like Angel Reese, come in. She's had. I think she had some difficulty to begin the season, but you can see her finally, catching on. You see young players like Aaliyah Boston, players like Ryan Howard. Just a lot of the young talent, coming into this league and just being able to hold their own, honestly. But I'll be real. I mean, even though this is considered a quote unquote off season league, like the players are treating it like this is actually like a real like actual league for them, honestly. So I've really been impressed because it's been a lot of competitive games, honestly. It's probably been way more competitive games than it's been like blowout games. And, the fact of the format, the format works so well because, you get it's almost like, actually, it's just like, how the All Star game used to be, where it's like, you had the first three quarters, it was like 12-minute quarters in the NBA All Star game, but then the last quarter, there was a target score. And they have that same format in our rival where you get the first three quarters, I think it's about 7 minutes each quarter, and then that last quarter where you have a target score, and then that's where you see both teams turning up a notch, especially defensively. And we've seen a lot of great games go down the stretch, honestly, and we've seen a lot of big plays from really big players. I think probably the most clutchest player right now in the league, I want to say, is Skylar Diggins Smith. From week one, hitting the game winning 3-pointer, and then of course knocking out other game winning shots as well. She's proven to be like one of the clutch players in the league so far, honestly. And then you talk about other production from other great players. Like I think right now the MVP has to be Nafisa Collier. She's been putting up ridiculous numbers, from the first game of the season, and she's only to continue to assert herself as the best player in the league, as the weeks have went on, honestly. So Unrivaled has been a success for those who have not caught a game yet. Honestly, they're on TNT every Friday, Saturday, and Monday. So luckily it is nationally broadcasted. And I would highly advise you guys to check it out, man, because it's really fun competitive basketball.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way we perceive what is women's basketball professionally and what is the off season is going to change whether it's in 5 years, whether it's in 10 years, because I mean, we can call it the off season, but if you're making money, or you're making more money perhaps than what you make in the regular season, I mean, that's your job.
Right.
Like that's it, period. And even if money wasn't involved, I mean, you have to be super competitive to get to this level. You know, I always wondered when people say like, "Oh, this game's an exhibition," or "This one doesn't matter." Like when someone hits a three in your face, it's just like, okay, like
Exactly.
now I'm motivated. Not now, all right. So yeah, I mean, are there oh, I saw that speaking of Angel Reese, she got the first ejection in the history of the league. I saw that. I saw that.
Yeah,
So
that was really interesting. I was actually on playback for that game. Shout out to my crew, the best DMW show. I mean, it's I thought it was uncalled for, honestly. Like the players get competitive. I mean, especially where they're going back and forth. Throughout the course of the game. Angel ended up, I believe, fouling Tiffany Hayes. She didn't agree with the foul. The ref gave her the first tech, and then I think she was just kind of like trying to understand where the tech came from. And the next, the ref gave the second tech, and the next, she was out of the game. I thought the tech was uncalled for, honestly, because like I said, I mean, it's competitive basketball, and we all know Angel Reese to be an elite competitor. She's gonna trash talk. She's gonna try to find ways to motivate herself and her teammates. That's what she's been doing ever since she was in college. So at the end of the day, I think as officials, you have to allow players to be able to express themselves in a competitive way because this is basketball, and both teams do want to win. Angel Reese is a player that wants to win at the highest level. So if you ask me, I thought the ejection was uncalled for. But it's something to look at, moving forward. Honestly, I think now players are gonna have to find a way to like not really express themselves as much, which is unfortunate because at the end of the day, a lot of things could lead to ejection. So, at the end of the day, you want to find a way to keep yourself on the floor.
you think officiating has been in general pretty good, or is it something that they're trying to figure out in this new league?
It's honestly been pretty decent to me. I mean, obviously, you don't agree with everything when it comes to officiating, but honestly, I think one thing that I would give them credit for is they are allowing the players to play. They are allowing them to be physical. So that's one thing that I do love from that aspect. But I think I don't know. To me, I just think that the ejection on Saturday night with Angel Reese was just honestly uncalled for. But aside from that, honestly, I haven't really had any other issues with the officiating throughout the first 3 weeks of the season.
Were there talks about half court when this league was being formed? Because like 3-on-3 on a shorter full court, it's very interesting because you see like no zone being played. I might be talking out of turn, but you see a lot of being played straight up because you have to play straight up when you play full court, and you have those few players on the floor. Was there talks about possibly doing half court when it was being developed?
I honestly don't think so. I think Brianna Stewart and Nafisa Kari, by the way, those are both the co-founders of Arrival. I think they always just had I think they always just wanted to do the full court format, honestly. Which is new because I mean when you go play pickup and even if you watch like Ice Cube's Big Three League, it's half court. 3-on-3 has always been half court. It's very rare to see 3-on-3 ever be full court, but they came in with the agenda of we're going to make this a full court league and we're going to make it look real. We're going to make it feel like it's 5-on-5, but we're going to condense it to 3-on-3. So I think that was always their mindset, and I think that was always the format that they always wanted to go to. And honestly, I think it's very beneficial, honestly, because I think it really helps these players conditioning. I think it's going to develop their conditioning as they head into the WNBA season. Like this league is from January to I think middle or late March, honestly. So once the WNBA season begins around like middle of May, and they have like a little bit of a month off, they'll be prepared and ready to go because of Unrivaled and because they had to play 3-on-3, and of course because of the constant movement that does come with 3-on-3. So in a way, I know that people were confused on it to begin, I mean, or once everything was announced, but honestly, I'm a big fan of it. I'm a big fan of the full court 3-on-3.
Might be an obvious question, but is women's basketball more popular than ever?
It's definitely growing. I still believe that it has its ways to go. Which I mean, you gotta think. I mean, the WNBA is not even 30 years old yet, and just to watch how much it has grown from the beginning has just been amazing to watch, honestly. But I mean, it's still going to definitely take its time. But I think I'll be real. I think in about another maybe 15, 20 years, I think it's going to grow bigger than ever. Like for instance, like the NBA formatted in 1946, and I don't really think it really gained its popularity until maybe like the 80s or the 90s. So it was like 40 plus years in before it really gained its popularity. Because even when you saw like Magic and Bird first came into the league, like there wasn't live broadcast of games. You had to go back and watch the games. So it just shows like how time as time continued, how much it had grown and how much it became more global. And I think the WNBA will be the same way. Now look, I mean, I give credit to a lot of trendsetters in the WNBA, where whether you go back in the past or even the present time, like you talk about Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, Asia Wilson, Brianna Stewart, Nafisa Collier, all of these all-star caliber players who have done such a tremendous job of being able to shine a light on women's basketball and just be able to perform at their best at a high level, to be able to get eyes on women's basketball. So I'm a big fan of it. I love the growth that it has had over the past, like, probably about 5 to 6 years. And I think it's gonna be even bigger, moving forward.
Last question here, and I have to ask it. Since I'm not a women's basketball, I wouldn't call myself a fan, not a huge follower or anything. Since you are, is it ever difficult? Something that bothers me about things that I enjoy is that um, a lot of things that I enjoy, people will use to push certain agendas, certain narratives, certain things that have nothing to do with the art or the sport or whatever you're consuming. And that has always bothered me. And like, for example, I see like there are some YouTubers, they will never talk about women's basketball unless it's like a negative thing, like a negative thing that's going on that doesn't promote the sport at all, but they don't provide any other analysis or anything else to the sport positively. Does that ever bother you at all?
Honestly, it doesn't, because I expect that from people. I think a lot of people, especially YouTubers, they're going to do whatever they want to do just for clickbait or just to be able to give viewership or attention, honestly. And you can tell the difference between like who's really a fan and who's not a fan. Like for instance, like they could talk about, oh, there was a big fight that happened in the WNBA, but they probably wouldn't talk about when a player like Asia Wilson dropped like 40 or 45 points per se, and just how she was able to really create in the mid range or even just be able to attack the basket, honestly. So you can always tell, the difference between like, those who really watch the game and those who really only care about when drama's only going down, honestly. So I just try to stay away from things like that, because at the end of the day, I don't want that to affect me, honestly, especially and especially affect my content, especially somebody who thoroughly follows women's basketball, who has a passion for covering women's basketball. My goal is to always highlight women's basketball at the highest pedestal. I'm going to always highlight not even just WNBA players, but and not even just college players either, like international players, honestly. So I'm just a big fan, and I love women's basketball all around. Where I'm not here for anything clickbait. I'm not here to try to tear them down. Honestly, I'm just here to always uplift women's basketball, and then of course always just shine and highlight the players and teams that definitely deserve it. Honestly, so as far as those people, they're gonna do them. Honestly, I will always try to stay away from them. But for me, I know that my purpose is way different from everyone else's.
Yeah, same thing. Block the YouTubers. Stay off. I'm about to get rid of Twitter. I'm gonna have to find a different way to follow you, man, because I gotta get off Twitter pretty soon. It's like I can't avoid the algorithm. It's like things that I see that I
Yeah, I
don't.
can't get it sane, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. So hey, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Definitely.
I buried the lead enough. Okay, 2 hours ago, about 2 hours ago, we got a trade, and I'll break it down for the listeners. Spurs received De'Aaron Fox, Jordan McLaughlin. Kings received Zach Levine, CD Sissoko, three first round picks, three second round picks, which will most likely turn into four second round picks, two first round picks. The Bulls receive Zach Collins, Trey Jones, Kevin Herter, and their own pick from San Antonio. I have lots of thoughts about this new trade. I know you were at work when this was happening, and it's pretty fresh. I'm not going to set you up very well. Any takeaways from this trade?
Um, Well, I'll say this trade definitely caught me by surprise, but it also didn't at the same time because for those who follow the NBA, you knew that there's been rumors swirling about De'Aaron Fox and his status with the Sacramento Kings. It's just been a very up and down year for them, especially a couple months ago after they got rid of Mike Brown as their head coach, and then they hired on Doug Christie as their interim head coach. But then maybe over the past maybe week or two, you started to hear rumors about De'Aaron Fox possibly being on his way out. And then, of course, you heard about scenarios about him going to San Antonio, or even I even heard people talk about Miami, honestly. Um, but honestly, the like when I look at it from that perspective, like it doesn't really surprise me. Honestly, I'm happy at the fact that De'Aaron Fox does get a new start. Honestly, and I think the Kings fans should appreciate what he was able to do there. Especially coming out of the 2017 draft and just being able to put them on the map. Honestly, I know that the beginnings were not as strong. Honestly, but even him being able to lead the team to the playoffs. They were the third seed in 2023, and they pushed the reigning champion Golden State Warriors to 7 games in that series. I mean, it took a Steph Curry 50-point piece just to be able to defeat them, honestly. So I think when you look at it from that perspective, honest, De'Aaron Fox was a very crucial part. He was the franchise player and part of the reason why Sacramento grew from being a rebuilding organization to to becoming a playoff team at one point. So give credit to him from that perspective. And now we get a new start of San Antonio. San Antonio is a young team that's on the rise. Honestly, we see the superstar potential in Victor Wembanyama in the season that he's having, and part of the reason why San Antonio is actually in a pretty good position, honestly. And I think what he really needed was an elite point guard. Honestly, I mean, look, I mean, we all know that we all know that he's currently playing with Chris Paul, and Chris Paul is one of the greatest point guards of all time. But now you have an electric point guard who you can connect with, off of the pick and roll, who you can connect with, off rim runs and everything. I think a great scorer and playmaker like De'Aaron Fox can take tremendous pressure off of a player like Victor Wembanyama. Now look, Wemby's going to automatically draw a lot of attention. He's going to automatically draw double and triple teams just because of how good he is. But at the end of the day, you can't necessarily rely on that because you have another elite scorer right next to you at the point guard position, and De'Aaron Fox, who also can control the game in his own way as well. So I like it from that perspective, honestly. And I think San Antonio, they're going to be a team that's on the rise, honestly, because, I mean, De'Aaron Fox, he's still very young. I think he's like 27, 28, honestly. So he's still very young and arguably entering the prime of his career. So that honestly does help them from that perspective. And as far as for the Kings, honestly, as far as getting Levine, I mean, the Bulls have been trying to get off of the Levine contract for a little while now. But honestly, nobody really wanted to take his contract because they didn't. I know a lot of organizations didn't believe that he had a lot of value. But Zach Levine's still a really good player, honestly. I'm very interested to see how things will work out in Sacramento, honestly. Um, I'm really surprised. I'm really curious to see what their future looks like, honestly, because I know that they just got Levine. They still got guys like DeMar DeRozan and everything. So I'm not sure what's going to transpire in Sacramento maybe over the next week, honestly, because I don't know, maybe they might make another move around the trade deadline. Who knows, honestly. But and as far as from the Bulls' perspective, I just feel like you probably could have gotten more, honestly, especially considering that you are moving your franchise's player. Honestly, I don't know if people view Zach Levine as their franchise player, but he was the best player on the team. So I just feel like in a way you possibly could have asked for more. But also the Bulls are a team that's looking to restart anyways. And I've been on record saying that they should rebuild, especially after the days of Zach Levine, DeMar DeRozan. I know they just got Lonzo Ball back, but to me, I think Chicago should put themselves in a position where they can start fresh and they can look to rebuild and build a young core around them, honestly. But honestly, I think the one team that did win out of this is probably the Spurs, honestly, because adding De'Aaron Fox is going to definitely keep them in playoff contention, honestly, and of course, and then of course, help them for the future as well.
So my takeaway, my opinion would be that there are no losers in this trade. And as you mentioned, if you're the Bulls or you're a Bulls fan, you might want more. If I'm a Bulls fan, I think I would always want more, even if it is a fair trade. Just going to be selfish in that way. But also, if I'm a Bulls fan, and from me looking from the outside, I've been begging the Bulls to do something like this for a really long time. And I gotta believe that, you know, a lot of Bulls fans are thinking, it's the end of that era and we just gotta rebuild and move on. And hey, like, Trey Jones is a starter on like half the NBA teams. Kevin Herter is great. Zach Collins is a decent role player, and we got a pick. I'm a little surprised how much the Kings got, but not too surprised. And the Spurs, I just want to say, trusting the process is something that I underestimated. I'll stand firm on I think they should have been more aggressive in Wimby's rookie year because I know the thought process of he's a rookie, we're not trying to win in year 1, we're trying to develop and I guess that ended up being the right thing considering it by year 2 you have another all-star to put next to him. So I'm kind of iffy. I'm kind of like, okay, it all worked out. You trusted the process. I still think you could have done more last year. So I just can't believe that I was super critical of the Spurs. It worked out. I'm always super critical of the front office of the Lakers, and it worked out.
Right.
So that's the other part I got to talk to you about. I mean, were you working? Were you sleeping during the whole Luka trade yesterday?
I was awake honestly. A friend of mine sent the link in the group chat, and it said Luka Doncic has been traded to the Los Angeles Lakers for Anthony Davis, Maxi Kleber, or excuse me, I think it was Max Christie, and I think a couple picks. And honestly, I thought it was fake. Honestly, I had to go double check. Honestly, and then even as Shams broke down the trade on Twitter, I was still thinking like, there's no way this is real. And then like maybe a couple minutes later, I got a notification from my ESPN app, and it said, "Yeah, the trade is true." And I was thinking like, wow, because this was something I did not see. I would have never thought of ever in life. Like Dallas actually trading their franchise player in Luka Doncic. I thought it would never happen, especially with all the success that Luka has brought to that organization. I mean, he came from the gates in 2018 and just dominated, honestly. Having that experience, playing overseas professionally, and then of course carrying that into the NBA, he found a lot of success. And on top of that, he's fresh off of a finals appearance, leading them to the NBA finals. I mean, I know that they lost to the Celtics, but like just watching him just be able to ascend in the playoffs, and then of course, him being able to build that connection with an elite point guard like Kyrie Irving. I just felt like Dallas was just really set for the next maybe 3 4 years, honestly. They talked about his conditioning status, which I understand, but honestly, at the same time, it's like Luca has never really been in shape like that. And it's kind of funny how now it's an issue because, and even with Luca not being in the best of shape, he's been still putting up phenomenal numbers throughout his career, honestly. And he's led the Dallas Mavericks to a lot of success, especially in the playoffs. So it's funny to see how now this is an issue, honestly. And even earlier they had posted the press conference, and talking about the trade. It was Nico Mannion, which is the GM, and then sitting next to him was Jason Kidd, which is the head coach. And you could see Jason Kidd was just not happy whatsoever, honestly. And then even from the Lakers perspective, it's something that I am still kind of wrapping my head around because I felt like Anthony Davis was playing his best basketball. I mean, even this past Monday, a week ago, he had 42 points and I believe 23 rebounds against the Charlotte Hornets. Anthony Davis has probably been playing his best basketball probably since like maybe 2 3 years ago. Honestly, if you ask me, look, I'm not saying that AD has ever played bad basketball, but everybody knows, with his injury history, him being in and out of the lineup, it's really hard for him to really be that impactful. But Anthony Davis has been there, honestly.
Yeah.
And Anthony Davis has really been playing at a high level and it has proven to be the Lakers' number one option, especially throughout the season. So it was very head scratching from that perspective. But at the end of the day, you got to think forward. Now the Lakers do have Luka Doncic, and they're pairing him next to a guy like LeBron James. If you ask me, I think the Lakers still have to hit the ground running, especially once the trade deadline does come around. They're definitely gonna need another big. Now look, I doubt they're gonna find another big that's going to fill the role of Anthony Davis, but they're gonna have to find another elite big that can play next to guys like Luca and LeBron James, especially two gifted passes like that. So you're gonna have to find a big who can possibly space the floor. You're gonna have to find a big who can play in pick and roll. And then of course defensively, being able to protect the rim, being able to switch, being able to guard smaller defenders, do a multitude of things. Like I said, Anthony Davis is hard to replace. However, like if you could find a big of that caliber potentially, then maybe I would probably believe that the Lakers could be in contention this year. However, this definitely sets him up for the future. Luka Dončić is 25 years old. People can arguably say he hasn't even hit the prime of his career, which is crazy, especially considering how well he has played throughout his first 7 years of his NBA career. But it definitely sets him up for the future, honestly. But I do also want to know, like, what do they plan to do now? Because LeBron James is 40 years old, and even though he is still playing at a very high level, he doesn't have many years left, honestly. I mean, if you ask me, I believe LeBron James will retire after next season. So, what can you do to potentially put him in position to where he can win now? Because that's really what it is. I mean, LeBron doesn't have anything else to prove at this point. To me, if LeBron James is going to stick around, is to potentially win a fifth championship. So, as the Lakers organization, what are you doing at this point to help him potentially win that? So, if they can figure something out by the trade deadline to continue to build, to continue to bring pieces that can help them, stay in contention, then you can look at it and say that that this was a good trade. Now, Anthony Davis is now playing next to Kyrie Irving and Klay Thompson. But the one thing that I do love about it is that now he goes back to his natural four position, which I've been vouching for him to do even from the beginning. Because when you look at that 2020 team that won the title in the bubble, he was playing at his natural four position, and he was playing next to elite bigs like Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee. And I feel like that was the secret formula that really helped unlock Anthony Davis as an elite all around player. So now he's able to do that again, playing next to guys like Daniel Gafford, playing next to guys like Derek Lively, who are not known for their offense, honestly, but they do a multitude of things. Like they're great rim protectors, they're great rim runners. So all they got to do is just do the dirty work and just allow Anthony Davis to really take over offensively. So honestly, when you look at it from both sides, even though this was the most shocking trade, because like I said, I would have never imagined this ever in life, but I do think there are some positives to be able to take out of this trade.
Absolutely. I mean, the magnitude of this trade is that it involved an NBA 75 player who, in my opinion, is having the third best year of his career compared to years where he was a finalist for MVP. 42 points, 23 rebounds in his last full game as a Laker. In my opinion, is fourth in MVP voting. It's such a big magnitude that we're not even talking about that player. Like
Yeah,
we're talking about it like it's such a a big discrepancy. But the discrepancy between Anthony Davis and Luka Doncic, according to Nico Harrison, is Max Christie, who is great, and one first round pick. So there's you just said so much that is just like it's 24 hours. I feel like I haven't stopped thinking about all of the things that happened and then could why it happened, what could possibly happen. But for the Mavs, it could be way worse. If they are not a top five defensive team, something is really wrong there. And the question about what you said about the Lakers and the future, I think that was louder before the Lucas situation happened. Because I bet that caught them off guard. Like, really, like, Dallas is calling us. It's not Kyrie. It's not about Klay Thompson. It's about Luca. Um, I was thinking, because they get Anthony Davis in 2019, and I'm thinking, okay, 1 or 2 years, it's going to be Anthony Davis's team. And I've
right.
thought for a while that they've had sort of not a culture problem, but it seemed like they weren't really too sure once LeBron was gone if it was going to be AD's team or they were going to be successful in that way. And then everything gets turned around in one phone call. So hey, unless you're like one of the like the top two or three untradeable players, just take care of yourself because clearly anything can happen in this league and
Literally.
businesses will flip on you even i- even if it's not right, if it's what they think is right. So I watched that Nico Harrison press conference right before we got on. Jason Kidd, I don't tell too much from that body language. He seemed like he didn't want to be there, but he's kind of nonchalant that way a lot of times. Nico's language is just like we did this, we thought this, we thought this, but then when it came down to decisions, it's like it was my decision. But everyone supported me. Everyone supported this. We are all in this together. I don't know why they did that press conference. It was really bad.
Yeah, I'm
Just
not 100% sure either. Honestly, like I'll be real, this whole trade is I'm still shocked by it. I'm still, even as I'm breaking it down and like I'm trying to look at the positives. I just never thought it would happen. Never in a day.
the Mavericks gave up a second round pick to the Jazz to make this whole thing work. They should not
Right.
be giving up any kind of assets when you got a top, in my opinion, like 3 or 4 player, could be best player in the league when he's healthy. Um, I did a video yesterday and I just talked about how like anything could seem possible at this point. Like you could tell me that the Lakers are getting ready to trade LeBron James, and I'd be like, no, but I don't know anymore.
Yeah, I wouldn't even be surprised at this point. I'd be like, okay, like just be prepared.
Yeah. Last part I want to talk about for this is what other moves, if any, the Spurs or Lakers are going to, sorry, the Mavericks or Lakers are going to do in the meantime. First one I want to start with is Austin Reeves pretty much gone, considering we now have like 3 players that play the same position.
If I'm the Lakers, yes, I would probably look to move Austin Reeves, and I know that that's hard to say because Austin Reeves has actually been playing really good basketball himself, honestly, and he's really ascended as an elite scorer and playmaker, honestly. But if you're gonna have a back, or excuse me, if you're gonna have a backcourt of Luka Dončić and Austin Reeves, it's great on the offensive side, but defensively, to me, it's atrocious. And I think that one thing the Lakers should go grab out there somehow, in the trade deadline is a defensive guard or somebody who can be elite on both ends of the floor. I don't know exactly who that is, honestly, but if you could find a way to move Austin Reeves to be able to get that type of guy, then I would definitely recommend it. Because in all honesty, I mean, if you're gonna go forward with Luka Doncic, then respectfully, you can find a way to move off of Austin Reeves, and I think that Austin Reeves could thrive even anywhere else. Honestly, I think that he has tremendous value, and he could go to pretty much any organization at this point and be able to prove himself as an elite all around player. So that's one thing that I'll say if I'm the Lakers, and then of course being able to get a big as well. And from the Maverick side, I think they got just about everything. Honestly, I mean, I think that they're pretty strong. From the guards, even the wings, honestly, and now the bigs, honestly. So if everybody can just stay healthy, I think that's just the number one thing that you have to put emphasis on when it comes to the Mavericks is health, honestly, because we all know that Anthony Davis, he can be in and out of the rotation as right now he's actually hurt as well. Kyrie could be in and out of the rotation too. Klay Thompson, same thing. So as long as everybody can stay healthy, this Maverick team alone can still be a playoff contender. Now, I don't have expectations from them to win a title, but they could definitely keep themselves afloat and, of course, still remain in playoff contention, honestly.
Hopefully healthy and happy, because Kyrie has given us about a year and a half of happy basketball, and let's keep it going. Like like that's the part that I was most worried about, is that, at one point Kyrie's trying to recruit LeBron to Dallas. Of course, Klay Thompson wants to go to Dallas. I mean, he's leaving Golden State because he's like, okay, they went to the finals, and I might as well go play with one of the best players. So that's a part that I am worried about. I won't be tracking it or anything, but if they are happy, healthy in the playoffs, I do not want to see this team against my home team if I had one. Like this
Yeah.
is not a team that I want to see. I say they're easily out of the play-in. I say they could easily be a top 4 team in the West, but uh, if they if they lose in the conference finals, it's going to be a media storm, is what I'm thinking. It's
Yeah.
like they're setting themselves up not only for a win now, but if they don't win now, there's a lot of criticism that can come your way opposed to just running it back. So yeah, if I'm the Lakers, pair Austin Reeves with that pick, go get Miles Turner and see if they have a guard that you can get. Jared Vanderbilt's back for like 5 games now. They got Dorian Finney-Smith with the reunion with Luka Dončić. So they have improved a lot on the defensive end, but I agree they could use one more guard. They could use one more big, and I bring up Miles Turner every trade season. So, so
He's still a great player.
he is great. I mean, if I'm Indiana, who shout out to them, they are 7-3 in their last 10. If I'm Indiana, I might consider hitting that second apron just to re-sign Miles Turner because, I mean, you you need someone to guard Giannis. You need someone to guard Jokic, Embiid if he's healthy. Uh, not handle them, but but contain them as much as possible.
Right.
So if I'm Indiana, I'm thinking about it. Speaking of which, uh, let's talk about a couple of top teams and any teams that you want to talk about, Nick. But I'll start at the top. The Cavaliers won a very inconsequential game tonight against the Mavericks, 144 to 101. Um, they are 40-9, 7-3 in their last 10. They recently went on a recent slide, I guess. Losing 4 of their last like 11 games. Still one of the top teams. Second in points, third in assists, first in 3-point percentage at almost 40%, which is amazing. They lead in offense at 121.6 and overall efficiency at almost 60%. Uh, what's your biggest surprise from the Cavaliers this year?
I'm highly surprised, honestly. I mean, it's crazy to say that I'm surprised because I did expect Cleveland to be one of the top contenders in the Eastern Conference, but for them to be number one and just be able to sustain that throughout the season has just been really fun to watch. Like they play a really fun style of basketball. It's great ball movement. They play at a very fast pace, and they find a high percent of shots, honestly. And I mean, you see the growth of this team from the start of the season to even now. Honestly, they love to play together. They know how to win games, and just in building a chemistry throughout the season, not even just this season, but just, over the past couple of years, ever since Donovan Mitchell's arrival, it's just been really exciting to watch, honestly. Um, like I said, Donovan Mitchell, he's playing at a very high level. Definitely one of the best guards in the NBA. But I think probably one of the biggest takeaways from me when it comes to Cleveland has been the assurgence of Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley was a high level guy, coming into the NBA, and it just took some years of development for him, honestly. And as we've been seeing throughout this year, he's been super dominant from all areas of floor. He's been dominant in the low post. He's been dominant as far as facing up. The mid range, knocking down 15-footers, even stepping out, spacing the floor, knocking down the three. Maybe not at the highest level, but just being able to occasionally knock down the shot. Honestly, like Evan Mobley is proven to be one of the best power forwards in the NBA. Honestly, he might actually be the best. Probably within like the next maybe couple of years. Honestly, who knows? But that's probably the biggest takeaway for me. Honestly, has been the growth of Evan Mobley. Now, when it comes to Cleveland, even though they have had a lot of regular season success, I do want to see how it translates to the playoffs because that's where the real season does happen. And hopefully, all their hard work from being so dominant in the Eastern Conference and of course potentially finishing with the one seed and then of course having home court advantage, hopefully that can translate to the playoffs to where they can make a deep playoff run and potentially get to the conference finals and then of course the NBA finals. So that's going to be really exciting to watch.
Yeah, I mean, from not making the play in 2 years ago to winning their first playoff series without LeBron since '93 last year, the expectation should be like it should be that they make it to conference finals or the finals.
I
And
agree.
I agree, Evan Mobley, had kind of a more natural progression of where he had this amazing rookie season where a lot of people, including myself, took notice. Kind of had a rough sophomore season or developing sophomore season, I'll say. And then he's developed to one of the best power forwards in the league. And I guess my biggest surprise is just the emergence of him pairing alongside Jarrett Allen. And what do you think? Do you think when you think about whether it's Cavs, whether we're talking about how Luka is going to play alongside LeBron James, do we talk about or overestimate like mixing and chemistry too much when it comes to, these high level, high IQ players?
I don't think so, honestly. I mean, I think when you look at the pairing of both Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. I mean, I think they've done a really good job of figuring it out, honestly, because people would think that it would not work just because. I mean, let's be real. Jared Allen is not known as an offensive player. Like, not saying that he can't score, but that's not necessarily his strong suit. He's an elite rim protector on the defensive end, and that's what he does best. He's an enforcer that the Cavs have needed. Throughout their run, honestly, you definitely have to give credit from him for him. Just being able to do what he does best, honestly, but it hasn't affected Evan Mobley at all, and honestly, and I mean you really see the connection with both of those guys, honestly, because both of them are very high level players. They know how to attack the rim. They know how to run and pick and roll. Honestly, one of the things that I don't think gets discussed enough is Evan Mobley's passing, and I think that we've seen both of them just be able to connect. Off of lobs. Off of pick and roll. Off of entry passes. And I think just having two dynamic bigs like that, who can be able to to be able to connect with one another like that. I think that is really tough to beat, honestly, especially with a guy like Evan Mobley who can force the defense to step out, and then, of course, that can open an opportunity for a guy like Jared Allen to be able to post up, or just be able to find an open opportunity at the rim. So, just having a guy like Evan Mobley on your team, it does make the game a lot easier for Jared Allen to occasionally find high percentage shots or even easy looks around the basket, honestly. So I love their chemistry, and I love the fact that they've been able to figure it out because, like I said, I mean, I know that the NBA is a new game, honestly, where, all five of your players have to be this talented offensive player. You have to be able to space the floor. You have to be able to provide some type of offense. But for both Evan Mobley and Jared Allen to be able to figure it out, and both of them just be able to play at their natural position, I think it's been one of the more underrated parts of the Cavs' success throughout the season.
Yeah, and it's crazy, and I can't help but think of the 2016 Warriors watching them because yeah, they sit at 40-9, and I just think about like how did I ever watch a Warriors season where they only lost 9 games?
Right.
Because we just watched the Cavaliers not just beat teams this year, like they are winning some of these games by quite a lot. So I would say conference finals or bust for this team. If they make it to the finals, that would just be pretty insane. Next up, I have Thunder right below that, 38-9, 7-3 in their last 10. Two of their losses have come against the Mavs recently, which is interesting, and one against the Warriors, where the Warriors just had one of those "we're not going to lose this game. We're gonna make everything. We're just gonna win no matter what" kind of games. They lead in steals per game. They lead net rating by a lot at 12.3. Defensive rating is first. Deflections are first. I mean, none of this is surprising to me because I've been following the development of the Thunder, and I just know that their goal has just been let's just get a lot of long, lanky players that can play defense, shoot the three, and provide spacing around our star players. So I don't have a hometown team. I from the Midwest. Always support Midwest teams. The Thunder have probably been my favorite team to watch this season. I'll send it over to you. What's your biggest takeaway from the Thunder?
Yeah, OKC's been one of my personal favorites too, honestly. And I mean, they're another team that plays such a fun brand style of basketball. And it's crazy because just a couple years ago, I just remember people having conversations like, "Oh man, Oklahoma City, they have a great young core around them. They're going to be good. What I'm saying? Like, just give them about another maybe 3, 4, 5 years." And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, this team is good enough to be in contention in the next maybe year or so. And you saw them get to the playoffs last year, even though they lost in the second round to Dallas, and but them just being able to continue to learn from that loss, and now they're the top seed, and in my opinion, they'll probably finish as the top seed in the Western Conference. It's just been really exciting to watch the growth, honestly. But even though they have been growing a lot as a young team, you can still see a lot of the growing pains in them. Like for instance, like you talk about the loss to the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors have been they started out the season hot, but they've been really struggling, especially with players like Steph Curry, who hasn't been really been playing at the highest level, and then of course other players as well. They've had different lineup rotations here and there, but those are games that in my opinion, the Oklahoma City Thunder should win. But unfortunately, they weren't able to win those games. So I think it's just still the growing pains of being able to show up on a night to night basis and just be able to take care of business, honestly, because those are games that are winnable for them, honestly. But aside from that, OKC has been great, honestly. Like I say, they're a great young core who plays such a great brand of basketball. If you ask me, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander should be the MVP of the season. He's been having such a phenomenal all around season, honestly, just continuing to assert himself as one of the best all around players in the NBA. You talk about Jalen Williams, who is just like, the next man up. Him just being able to be an elite wing. And I think, honestly, he doesn't really get his flowers as one of the top wings in the league, if you ask me. And then of course, the rest of the supporting cast, like Chet Holmgren, I know that he's been in and out of the rotation, but whenever he's healthy, he provides such a dynamic on both ends of the floor. The acquisition of Isaiah Hartenstein was huge, especially being able to get him from New York. And I think that we've been able to see his production. Same thing with a guy like Alex Caruso as well. I think that was a steal from Chicago. And I don't think people really highlight that enough, honestly. I think OKC, of course, they can use other pieces, but I think they have the right pieces to me. If they lock in, honestly, I feel like they have a really high chance of being able to get to the NBA Finals. Now, look, the competition will be tough because you still got to go through a very tough West. Um, you know, Denver is still playing at a very high level. You see the emergence of the Houston Rockets. The Memphis Grizzlies are obviously still in the conversation. Same thing with teams like even like Minnesota. I know that Minnesota has been very inconsistent this year, but you can't knock them out. But I think OKC at this point may have the highest chance out of everybody in the Western Conference to actually make it out of the West and get to the NBA Finals. But it's gonna take a lot more growth, honestly, and a lot more experience. But if you ask me, I think that they're built for this year.
Yeah, the luxury of having Isaiah Hartenstein, especially with missing Chet Holmgren, is incredible. And the thought of a healthy OKC team in the playoffs, we could be seeing something more unprecedented where we see OKC run 9, 10 man rotations in the playoffs because they have small lineups, they have big lineups, they have fast, they have strong, they have a lot of different players that they can throw at you, and this has all been with missing their second or third best player. The contrast between Chet Holmgren, who is in the same draft class as Paul Banchero, is very interesting because if you think back to that draft night, Orlando surprised everyone by taking Paul Banchero, who I don't even think they like worked out or anything. And um, now we have this year where both Paulo and Chet have missed time because of injuries, and those are, in my opinion, the two best young teams in the league, and or the best two defensive teams in the league as well. So lots of similarities in that draft class.
I agree,
Yeah.
1,000% agree, honestly.
Let's do one more. Last one we'll talk about today is Boston Celtics. They won against the Sixers tonight. They are 7-3 in their last 10. Fifth in points, fifth in blocks. They lead 3-point makes by a lot because they shoot tons and tons and tons of threes. They are third in offensive rating, fifth in defense. Uh, the East has been more interesting towards the top. There have been certain teams that have underperformed. Uh, we'll start there. Do you think Boston has performed to your expectation? Have they underperformed this year? Is there anything surprising about this year coming off the championship?
It's honestly hard because Boston still has been playing at a high level, but I also feel like they've had stretches where they haven't played at their best. And I know that with championship teams, especially after winning a title, there is a little bit of that hangover where you're just coasting through the season. You're not really taking certain games serious. Like for instance, I think like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago they had a bad loss to the Toronto Raptors. They lost by like 14, 15 points, and nobody expected that whatsoever. So I think like even like the Celtics do have stretches where they are playing at a high level, but then they also have stretches where they're not playing at their best. Honestly, they're not locked in the way that they need to be. But whenever they are locked in, they're still the team to beat, honestly. And Boston still has a great chance of repeating. Honestly, I think that they can still make it out of the Eastern Conference this season. They're probably the one team that has one of the more complete teams when you talk about from top to bottom, from the guard position to the big position. Honestly, from the guards, you have great guards like Drew Holiday, Derek White. Honestly, I mean, Drew is continuing to prove why he's a multiple time champion. Just being able to be the anchor on the defensive end, being able to set the tone. Being able to guard opposing point guards, be able to guard opposing ball handlers, being able to be physical, being able to create turnovers, just be able to use his size and his physicality to be able to disrupt the smaller guards. Derek White the same way. Derek White is trying to be a great defensive player, but then also be able to contribute at a high level offensively. Then you talk about your wing duo, Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown. Regardless of whether you think who is a better player than other, they've shown that they can complement each other perfectly. Honestly, one can take a back seat, the other one can pretty much dominate, be able to lead the way and put the team on their shoulders, and they just always find a way to be able to complement one another. Then you go to the big man position. Kristaps Porzingis, his shooting has just been incredible. I mean, even throughout last year, but definitely this year as well. Honestly, his floor spacing has just been incredible. And I mean, they are a really good shooting team, honestly. I mean, I know that we talk about how many threes they take, but they also make a lot of threes as well. Like they don't mind. They're fearless when it comes to, shooting the three ball. And it's benefited them tremendously. I mean, they've had a lot of high scoring games because of many nights where they did shoot the three ball very well. But I think Boston is prepared to potentially repeat, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do. Honestly, I think that they're by far the best team in the Eastern Conference, and I know that the East has gotten a lot better. Honestly, especially when you look at Milwaukee starting to really find themselves as a unit. You talk about the New York Knicks, honestly, and a couple other teams as well. But to me, I think right now the East runs through the Boston Celtics, and until somebody beats them, it's always going to be them.
When we think about depth, I mean, I talked about the Thunder, but it probably is the Boston Celtics, where I was calling for Derek White to be an All-Star reserve last year. I mean,
Mm.
I think on I think on a different team, Derek White is an all-star player. I mean, if you just bump up the usage a little bit. Uh, Amazing acquisition when they got him from the Spurs. So I don't really have um, much else to add to that. I mean, the East has been surprising in a sense where that I thought the Sixers would be a top team and they weren't. I thought the Bucks would come out the gate stronger and I think they've finally are playing their best basketball in this Damian Lillard era. Teams like I said, the Pacers are in fourth place. I mean, depending on how New York does, they could go into third place, but I mean, they started out slow. A lot of people were giving Halliburton tough, a tough time, but they really found their stride. Even teams like the Raptors who won tonight, the Raptors are 8-2 in their last 10. And I I'm like, I need to start paying attention to them now because I put them in the back of my league pass rankings. I'm like they're in the Cooper Flag lottery. They don't care about winning games. So the West, still dominates. I think the East is getting a lot better. Goes through
Yeah, the
Boston.
East has been very talented, honestly. I mean, I know that when it comes to the two conferences, they've been more the weak link, but you've been seeing a lot of improvements from that conference, honestly. When you talk about Boston, you talk about Cleveland, Milwaukee, New York, honestly, even young teams like Orlando, who is on the rise. Like the East has shown that they're very competitive this year, so I'm happy.
And don't ask Joe Mazzulla about trades, according to him at the press conference tonight. He came in, said, don't talk to me about trades. He doesn't care. Even though I think as an NBA head coach, I think he cares a little bit. I think he cares just a little bit. Anyways, Nick, I know it's getting late there. I appreciate your time today. Nick, where can people listen to you, find you? What are you working on?
Yeah, man. First and foremost, man, thank you so much for coming on, or thank you so much for bringing me on. Honestly, it's a pleasure to always talk basketball, whether it's the NBA, WNBA, college, whatever it is, man. So I definitely appreciate you for having me on. I mean, we can definitely do this again. As far as for me, you can find me anywhere. First and foremost, follow me on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, Nick Andre ATR. I am a host of different podcasts. First, let's start with For the Love of the Game. You can catch that check that out on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, anywhere you listen to your podcast. Another one I do is covering Florida State basketball, how to believe in FSU basketball. Same thing, you can find that Apple, Spotify, iHeart, wherever you listen to your podcast. And then I do another show titled The Best Damn W Show. We go live every Tuesdays where we talk W or just women's basketball all around. You can check us out anywhere, honestly, YouTube, we also go live on StreamYard as well. Same thing, even after the episode, we post the episodes immediately right after on all platforms. So, make sure to be able to check that out, honestly. So, and then of course, I do a little bit of writing too. I write for different platforms like Fansided, and then of course other ones as well. So just be able to check me out. Just follow me on Twitter, and then you'll be able to find everything, all of my content.
Nick, always busy, always working, always staying engaged. And if we don't see each other before the playoffs, I'm having you back on for the playoffs no matter what. Yeah,
No
that's
doubt,
right.
man. Let's do it.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you to listeners. Like, subscribe, go follow Nick on everything. And I'll be back next week unless there's another big trade in the next few days. See you next time.